Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Friday virtual office hours with Commissioner Wilson.
Hello, happy Friday.
How's everybody feeling today? How are you?
I'm good. I just want to make everybody feel a little more comfortable that I'm not going to be singing anytime soon. This was actually a really nice favor of Lee's boyfriend, Ernest, here, who set this up so that I could have my hands free and talk with him all I want without hopefully knocking into the microphone too much. But
5:30 we start karaoke.
well, the second that this was set up, I wanted to start singing, and then I realized that I would immediately lose followers. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just stick with the office hours, and we can
Yeah.
sing another time.
Yes. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Lee Perry. I'm the senior aide. I've been answering a lot of your messages that you've been sending us and asking you to please email us with district1@ocfl.net as the email, or you could drop your comments right now and the commissioner can answer them live for you.
Yes, and to that point, I know that I have really been very blessed with having had lots of connections in our community for years and years and years. And what happened when I was elected was people still have all my personal and old email addresses, which means that sometimes, unfortunately, I don't get to them as fast as we really could here as a team. So if you are using my personal email address and it's something that has to do with our county and a way that we can maybe help you get some answers or resolution, please use the District 1 email address so that we can get to that as quickly as possible. And it allows us to use that communication if we need to get in touch with another department here, we've got you in the system, we made a case, and it makes it a lot easier to get answers or resolution.
So that email is district1@ocfl.net, or you can also message us here. We got like a couple hundred new followers this past week. So just so you all know, these virtual office hours are for transparency and for the
Yeah.
commissioner to do weekly updates.
Yeah, I think if you've been following us for a while, you know that one of my biggest, I think, really goals, missions, is to pull back the veil on some of the things that people find mysterious or don't understand in local government. And I'm going to be the first one to admit that there's a lot still that I have to learn. But I feel like if I have my community, Orange County, on the line with me and going through this process, that we'll get more done in the time that I'm here. So I feel like it's a really important goal and part of my job is to make sure that transparency is there and make sure that I'm opening a dialogue. I don't know all the answers, but we can, if we get the questions, we know where to start. And so, there's been so many times since I came into office, which was, not that long ago, where if somebody out there hadn't reached out to us and expressed something that was going on in the community, that we wouldn't have known about it because there's just not enough eyeballs out there that are, without your help, some of those things would get by us. And so, yeah, if you want to share this office hours, or make sure that you spread within your community how to get in touch with us and to follow us online. The office started getting out a newsletter. Make sure that you're registered for that so that we can update you of anything that's going to start small and continue to grow, so that we have as many channels of communication as possible.
So, right off the bat, a lot of constituents always reach out about COVID-19.
Yes.
And they want to know updates about the vaccination, updates. We have every story, I feel, come to this
Yeah,
office.
and listen, it's a moving target, and I know it sounds like a broken record to say it again and again and again, but thank you for your patience, thank you for your kindness, and I don't mean just to us, but to everybody in the community, because we're not done. We passed the point now where we have more people vaccinated than we have positive cases, which is, I felt like, a turning point. And I think in Orange County, really the process that they've been using to get people vaccinated has been very orderly. I know there is a supply issue, and I also understand that there's a national strategy that's been employed to resolve that supply issue, but it's still going to take patience. So a couple things that came up this week that we can remind people of. And, once again, if you have any questions about any of this, please do not hesitate to reach out. But some numbers, anyway, that we have, and I think this is as of actually yesterday is when I sort of pulled off the latest and greatest. Well, actually, the update on the portal. So, vaccination portal for Orange County, and this is specifically Orange County's vaccination registration and distribution. So it's the one that's going on through the convention center. The portal will open up February 15th at 9 a.m. What I suggest is that if you haven't already, to go on the ocfl.net website and register yourself through, there's a link there that takes you to a third party that does the appointments. Go ahead and register yourself and be ready to go for when that portal opens in the morning. You can do that for a family member or a loved one. We, at this time, are still only vaccinating, because the state of Florida dictates this through the health department, over 65. Residents that are over 65, and you must have proof of your Florida residency. So you don't necessarily have to be from Orange County, but you do have to be a Florida resident. And the way that the Orange County program works is that you make an online appointment, and it generates a QR code, which is a little scan code that when you go, they scan that in, and that way they know exactly which batch of vaccination you've been given. You'll get a card that tells you when you're supposed to come back for your second round of vaccine, and we have been also been giving those out for the people that were in the first set of appointments for vaccinations. And so yeah, I mean, it's going. I know it feels like it's not happening fast enough, but I do think that having heard this week from communities of people who are getting through, I just have to embrace the positive stories and then try to really help get people all the information that they need. If you call 311, the people that are there, that is our Orange County's information line, and amongst many different departments that they have information for, they can help people navigate that online appointment system. So please feel free to utilize that if you're having a hard time getting on the website, or if the website looks wonky to you and you're like, am I on the right tab? Call the 311. They know they have an algorithm where they can help you walk through those steps for an appointment. But yes, February 15th, the portal opens. We still have ongoing testing at Barnett Park 7 days a week through the county. That is free of charge. You don't need insurance. You don't need to have symptoms. It is purely a open testing site. They have the lab test that they do, which is a little more intensive, and they have a rapid version. So that's a resource. And I think, you know, as we move forward, testing is going to be as important as ever, because that contact tracing is really how we're going to keep people safe until we have the vaccinations, you know, over the largest percentage of our population.
And I did see a post, which I'm sure next week we will have more to update you on, but I did see a post from Anna Escamani about how the new Walmart locations will most likely, and I think she got a confirmation this morning, will be taking people with pre-existing conditions that are under 65. So we'll get more information on that and update you.
Yes.
We just haven't had that information given to us yet.
Yeah, and I know that this may be a repeat for some folks, but let me just say that the coordination for the vaccinations is at a local level, including state and federal government. So it's really a very there's a lot that goes into where and how those are being disseminated. And I understand that some of the pharmacy outlets like the Walmart, Sam's, I believe Walgreens, that those are going to be directly from the federal government. So there's not going to be the Orange County intervention as far as how we are disseminating those, but we will have all the information. And my understanding is that the mayor was on a call with mayors from around the country about how that's going to work. So we're going to be able to get that information out as soon as we get it. It will probably be going on in conjunction with the county's vaccination, much like the way that testing rolled out, where the county first offered it at the convention center, and then we started being able to see it at CVS and Walgreens. And I think it's going to look very similarly, where we're going to see more and more vaccination opportunities. And that doesn't mean that we're going to stop having a county based vaccination program. It just means that hopefully we'll be able to get more population in and through by doing it that way.
Yeah. So feel free, because I know a lot of people ask about, you know, people like their kids with pre-existing conditions and et cetera. Feel free to email district1@ocfl.net. And as we get the information, we'll be sending it out.
And listen, I'm going to say something that may be, I don't know, somebody may take it the wrong way. I don't really care. Email the governor. The governor of Florida is the reason why we haven't been able to get our high risk under 65 citizens vaccines yet. And you know, I was fascinated by the the conversation he had yesterday with people in the media where he said, I think it's ludicrous to consider a travel ban to Florida. But in the same breath, he's not vaccinating people who work on our hospitality industry. You know
Yeah.
how we know for sure we can open up Florida is to get some of those people vaccinated. And you
Yeah.
know how we can make sure that we're projecting a very safe environment here is to make sure that we're getting those people vaccinated that are literally hosting. You know how we can make sure kids are back in school? We get our teachers vaccinated. So right now, if you're over 65 in all of those categories, you are absolutely eligible. But until we really make a good case, at least in Orange County, that we have a younger median age here, and our population of hospitality workers and their health and well-being is going to be critical to getting us back to where, you know, pre-COVID economy. And I think we need to make sure they're all vaccinated. So a little bit of a pivot there on my soapbox, but you know, I just want you all to know that we don't get to make the decision about who gets eligible, who's eligible. We get to make the decision about how that appointment system is going to look. We get to make the decision about using the convention center and the resources that go into that. We get to even invest in more PPE and invest in additional training for our paramedics and our firefighters, but we don't get to decide who's eligible for the vaccine. So that's sort of where we are with that.
And we get so many different types of inquiries. So, like, one major one that I know you want to update about is the new rental assistance program.
Yes, and actually, I have another thing really quickly that I
Okay.
forgot. I registered for this, and I love it because it blasts information to me in the form of text. And I used to hate getting the text during the campaigns from all the all the political text. But right now, it's really great to see these texts coming from the county because it's updates of things like portals opening, or if there's any other change in application status for anything. If you text OCFL, so OCFL like Orange County, Florida, COVID, OCFL COVID to 888-777, you will be on the list of text blasts. If you don't recall that, we'll put it in the comments, but also it's on the website. Sign up for that. I've really thought I get a lot of information now. In fact, I went back and looked up some of this about the eligibility after I got my most recent update myself, and just made sure that everything was sort of consistent before we brought the messages to you all. So I think it's a great service. You can also, there's an app that has alerts from Orange County that you can put it right on your phone, whether you have an Android or an iPhone, and that app will also push alerts, which is a nice way to get those. And if you want to put them on a loved one's phone, and you know, if you're like me and there's only one or two people in your house that are technically savvy, and those people can help get everybody else informed, then that is, you know, that's being a good family member. So thank you for doing that and for staying in touch with us about it. And yeah, it's been.
And in the meantime, you know, the fire department is finding some, slowly but surely, they're going into communities that, you know, might not have as much of an ability to be mobile or have access to internet. So if you have any communities that you know the majority of the population does not have access to a car or access to the internet, and they're very scared of leaving the house and getting information, feel free to email us locations as well, and we'll see if we can get them on the priority list of the fire department as well.
Yeah, we're hoping that their inventory and ability goes up because, you know, it really is that is the problem solver for there's a large majority of our elderly population that just don't have the mobility and the option. So you know, and then I also think there's a portion of the population that are just worried about going to the convention center, that it does look very daunting. And so, you know, when we are able to send our emergency services people in and they know who they are because this is our firefighters and our paramedics and those are trusted members of our community, that it really is such a great way to make sure that we're getting that vulnerable population vaccinated.
So, like I said, we get people that ask
Rental, yeah.
about other things, right? We get people that are like, can you know? And we toured the Family and Children and Family Services Department, and there's a bunch of resources that the county offers.
Yes,
Um,
and there are resources for all ages, and I think also when we were talking about the rental assistance and some of the information that was updated recently about the rental assistance, in Orange County, even after the most recent round of CARES money was distributed, and that's the federal act that helped local governments disseminate aid into the community. Orange County continued to do an eviction diversion program with a different set of funds, which required a landlord to be a voluntary participant, and there were some pretty distinct parameters for that program. It will be ongoing, so that program is still open, and that is a voluntary eviction diversion program, and there's lots of information about it on the website. What we found out this week is that because of a new act that is going to be coming, that was signed into law, that provides more rental assistance funds from the federal government, that there will be another opportunity to get funds, and we're going to be able to hopefully make sure that we're bridging the gap with some of these people that have recently been laid off, or that there is some ongoing issues with them getting any assistance so far, because I know that some of those obstacles have been horrendous for people. It's actually called the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and from what I understand, there's it's a relief bill that will be providing $25 billion in emergency rental assistance. So, whatever we get here in the county will be disseminated as expeditiously as possible. And one of the things that really we've learned here, and the people that do this here have learned how to do, is to process these things really quickly, because we understand that every day that goes by is another day that somebody is at risk of losing their home, and I think, or their rental, and I think a lot of times that can feel like a full-time job, navigating those systems to try to figure out how to stay where you are. And if you're trying to actually do a full-time job, and the assistance gathering is a full-time job, then that really puts you in a bad spot. So it appears that if everything goes as it looks like it is going to go, that the portal for that rental assistance will open up March 1st, the beginning of March. We will continue to update you as we get information. The eligible recipients will have people that have rental payments, past rental payments due. So even though federally, when you read the bill, it talks about that some of the funds can be used for some front end, really the way Orange County is directing it is for people that have past due, so that we make sure that they're caught up, and that we are kind of putting them at a level playing field. There's I think a 3-month window that they're looking at, and that there's also a component in it for utility and other home energy costs, because I know that those things can also really be a burden, and can cause the spiral that then ends up being a default. So all those will be involved.
Awesome. Well, you had a pretty busy week. If you wanted to share some updates, some good wins about the conservation funds.
Yeah, so there are days and my friends and family that are out there know that there are days I come home feeling a little bit frustrated at bureaucracy, and at the kind of siloing of issues that happens when you have a large local government. And we are still navigating all those interactions, and I'm nothing if not really stubborn, so we're going to continue to push and pull, and however we need to get as many answers as possible. But every now and then I feel the needle moving in the right direction, and this week I felt that on Tuesday. One of the agenda items was actually an approval of putting 125 acres into that Green Place funding. There hasn't been an acquisition since 2009. And as you follow the bulldozers around, I just hit it, I'm so sorry. As you follow the bulldozers around Orange County, you know how important it is that we act as quickly as possible. So that acquisition felt like movement. It was a high priority acquisition for the people that really champion the Green Place program. And in our office, we are going through the process of identifying potential places in District 1 that we can go through the same process for, and try to get the funds to acquire in the coming weeks and months. So that was very exciting.
Could this become a budgetary thing that happens every year, or when they're addressing like how funds will be allocated?
Yeah,
because I feel like we shouldn't go 10 years.
I agree, and I think the Green Place initiative was put in with really great intentions, and I think what happens, because there are limited needs in a large growing county, there's unlimited needs and limited funds, that there ends up being, you know, if there's not a political will, then those things don't necessarily happen. Clearly, this office, my intention is to continue to prioritize that green place funding and to put away some, environmentally sensitive and ecologically fragile lands, because once they're gone, they're gone. And I don't want to be, I don't want to, not on my watch. I'm like, not on my watch. We're going to try to do everything we can. So I'm going to continue to make that a budget priority. And we'll continue to reach out to the community about opportunities where that may happen. I know that not every acquisition is going to be 125 acres. This was a big acquisition, but it was long overdue. So there may be opportunities for smaller parcels, or equally as important because of where they are or what their ecological benefits, what ecological oh my gosh, my brain has just went scrambled. But whatever the thing is that we need to make sure is protected there, and how it impacts other ecology and other systems. So I want to make sure that we feel really lucky that we have people in our district that have been in touch with us that know a lot more than we do about a lot of these systems, our waterways, some of the historical uses of the land. And so we were really trying to identify some of the opportunities that we can take in protecting some of those places.
Also, there was some exciting, we did do a little segment, I think on your second or third week, about the Humane Society coming here. And now all of that work is that
Yes.
they've done is going to pay off, because we're moving forward with the puppy mill ban.
Yes, it was on the Tuesday agenda. Tuesday's morning agenda felt, like really there was some really important work that was moving forward. And this was another one of the agenda items, was an open discussion about, and so let me back up and explain a little bit about what the intention and what the driving force is for this particular local ordinance. Orange County doesn't necessarily have an issue with puppy mills. We don't, it's typically areas that have more rural ag type uses, and lots of them where puppy mill operators can work in sort of the darkness. The problem we have in Orange County is we're providing a market. And so we are an endpoint marketplace a lot of times in some of the stores that sell puppies for puppy mills that are in the Midwest that we have no control over. So like any criminal enterprise that happens successfully, without really being stopped, the reason why is because there's a supply and a demand. And unless you can stop the supply or the demand, the laws just sit on the books, and you have a really hard time trying to protect the victims. In this case, it's puppies and it's consumers. So what evidence has shown, and what the Humane Society was able to bring forward and to demonstrate through data and through years of research, is that when a municipality or a county quits allowing retail sales of puppies, we don't get the mass imports from puppy mills. Now, this does not affect reputable backyard breeders. This does not affect people who have rescues and do fosters. This doesn't affect pet stores that host rescues and fosters. In fact, it does the opposite. What we really are hoping for is that Orange County will become like the municipalities that have done this type of an ordinance, and it really helps get a lot of those foster organizations some great retail space, if you will, in order to be able to get their own puppies adopted. So, retail outlets that sell supplies and food and do grooming, well, it doesn't affect them at all. All it does is affect the retail sale of puppies. And it was heartbreaking to hear some of the research that went into this, of the sick and dying puppies, animals that come in, that they're sold at top dollar, $4,000, $5,000. Some of this testimonial was,
God.
and were suffering from day one. Families that fell in love with this little being ended up not just in heartbreak and tears, but also in debt, because a lot of times they finance that. So, consumer protection is also in local government. And you think about, one of the things we need to make sure of is that there's no predatory retail uses that we can prevent, and the other one is to make sure that if there's animal cruelty that we can prevent, that we're doing that. And this is a 2-for-1 if we go forward with this ordinance. So on Tuesday it was a discussion item, and what will happen is it now goes back into sort of the processing of language for an ordinance, because it looked like there was a very strong overall consensus to go forward with this, which was really exciting to see the mayor and the other commissioners that were, on board with getting some language together, getting some more research together. And so, yeah, it looks like we're making some forward progress. It was hard to listen to the public comments that day, but it was important to listen to them. Did you get a chance to hear them?
No, but I do know, a lot of things about this really fascinated me and scared me. The fact that these animals are sickly and they're in really poor conditions, right? And then they're fed these antibiotics that can eventually, build a tolerance over time, and can also, I guess, affect some of the owners, because they're going to be basically these vessels of disease.
Yeah, and
that
any
they
other
pass
animal that's in the
on.
home, any other pet that's in the home. So it was so sad to hear from some of these pet owners who didn't realize how dangerous, and it, essentially brought this dangerous, really, I mean, it was a dangerous little puppy into their home, and it affects them, and it affects the health of their other pets. It is. It's
And especially in a time of a pandemic where literally, factory farming and wet markets are the direct cause of most of the epidemics and pandemics that have happened, and illnesses that have spread so quickly. Now, one thing that you taught me that I thought was fascinating was how the laws protect property over things that I would assume quality of life. I would assume that our laws in general are supposed to be protecting our quality of life, but no. You were saying that they're
well,
mostly trying to protect property, and the animals are looked at as
as property.
property.
That's right. The issue is that we don't have a category for living beings that aren't human, that provides them with more protection than either our animal cruelty laws or something that I've done to affect your property, your dog. So if I've hurt your dog, then I can be held accountable. Or if there's an animal cruelty crime that took place, then I can be held accountable. But the issue in stopping this type of abuse is that really it has been overseen largely like any other crop, which is tragic, right? To think of puppies as a crop. And so the agriculture departments, USDA, is the only real department that has sort of been tasked with oversight, and it's just not, it doesn't work. There isn't enough oversight. And yes, you're right, until we figure out how to unravel the way that we see our domestic animals, that we see our well, really, I think any living being as its own entity and not necessarily the property of someone else, then it's very difficult to affect any change that someone can say, well, wait a minute, that's the way I make my money.
Yeah.
I sell puppies. You can't do this to me. And the problem is that, if that person who's selling puppies isn't doing it ethically or responsibly, or even in a way that can protect the health and well-being of the people who live here in Orange County, then we have to find some new language to put on the books that will protect the people here in Orange County. And that's where this has been. Actually, this ordinance is in effect in 76 other localities in Florida successfully. There's never been a legal challenge to it that knocked the language out. So it appears to be absolutely a legal method of preventing that type of animal cruelty. I think, if you'd ask me what I want to see in my lifetime, it is us making sure that we have identified sentient creatures as something that should have a legal right to live and exist and thrive without them being our property, because that way they do get a different bundle of rights, legal rights, that aren't inherent in property rights. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Yeah, but there are responsible breeders out there.
Yes.
And regulation, right?
Yes.
Is really how you make sure that things
Yeah.
like this don't happen.
Right. Well, and I was going to say the responsible breeders are actually very much in favor of something like this. And we had public comment from some veterinary experts and pet owners and some breeders who do understand that what's happening to their breed that they love so much is that there are that because of the puppy mills and what they're doing to the health and well-being of an entire breed, that they can eventually actually also be affected. So there was very large consensus. There are also some. One of the retail outlets that has what appears to be importing from a puppy mill somewhere in the Midwest that has really been under scrutiny from the federal government, but they haven't been successful in shutting it down, is also right now under scrutiny from our state lawmakers and the state attorney's office because of some bigger violations. So hopefully, even in the meantime, even while we're working on this ordinance to make sure it doesn't happen again, that particular retailer will be held to account, and we can try to make sure that there's no more puppies hurt in the meantime. The other side effect, and I know we talked about this earlier, of an ordinance like this, is it really does also help us get homes for our animals that need to be rescued or that need a new home, because a lot of times when there's a retail market, we aren't, as taxpayers, only paying. We're paying as taxpayers to make sure that those people are held to account, which isn't happening right now. So that's kind of wasting tax money. But we're also sadly paying to warehouse and euthanize animals that need homes. So, when you think about the complete loss of our resources, the loss of life, and, the animal abuse implications, they're big. And I really think it's something that we could do within the next few months that'll make a huge difference.
Just a last note, if you can go to the Humane Society's website, they have so many campaigns, not even just for puppy mills, but for all different types of conservation and protections. And also, what's the name of that shelter that you're always posting about? Pause for...
Oh, there's a few. I mean, I know that if Rescue Me Orlando is, I always call them the Tinder for they're the Tinder for the dogs in our shelter here that are on death row.
Yeah,
they do a last chance euthanasia list that is heartbreaking, because these were dogs that somebody at some point had in their home, and for one reason or another, they are now either because they have some medical needs that haven't been met or can't be met, or they've got a behavioral problem that wasn't addressed, which I believe always falls back to the people that probably were around that dog. And so Rescue Me Orlando does a really, really great job of getting in there. They videotape and they take pictures of the dogs that are on at risk of euthanasia. And a lot of those dogs can't be just adopted to a family. They have to go to a rescue. So then what happens is, I've sort of gotten connected with some of the rescues that they end up with, because a lot of the rescues now don't shelter. They actually have a foster network. So there's, foster families that foster again and again and again in their network. They'll pull a dog out of the shelter, the county shelter, and find a foster for them. A lot of times it's because of a special breed. You've probably heard of, like, Pity Party of Central Florida. It's a pit bull rescue, and a lot of times they'll pull
Pity Party.
They'll pull and try to foster until the dog either has and they'll do sometimes there's a fundraiser for whatever medical needs there are until the dog can be adopted. Oftentimes, there can be some behavioral work done on the dog while it's fostering so that it can be adopted. So, those are the goals from those. What was the other one?
It's pause for...
Cause for pause.
Cause for pause.
That's where Happy, my dog Happy. My dog Happy.
You're always posting stuff. I'm always like, Ernest, let's go. Let's go
Yes,
get him right now.
they do a great job. Yes, my
Um,
dog Happy was actually her mother was found in the woods and was probably a hunter discard. She was probably a hunting dog that they just didn't want anymore or whatever, and was found in the woods ready to have puppies. And Happy was, born actually at the foster house, and ended up at our house. So I have a vegetarian with a hunting dog. What do you
yeah,
do?
so funny. Well, please rescue or just research a little bit more information about your breeders so that,
Yeah.
you're doing the responsible thing and not bringing a sick puppy into your home or, being that consumer that's helped driving this market.
Yeah, and the good breeders are part of this conversation. So I don't have any fear of offending them. They have really been part of the ongoing dialogue, and I choose to do rescue, but I know that isn't for everybody, and I understand that we need to partner with the good breeders to make sure that we're getting the puppy mills shut down. That's how we do it. We in that supply line, and we get everybody else on the same page.
Another update that you got this past week was on redistricting,
Yes.
which I didn't know anything about. I just thought that it was some data collection, and then maybe I did assume that gerrymandering was a part of it. I was scared, but no, there's a whole science behind
Yes.
redistricting.
Okay, and so and the reason why, I mean, I think everyone knows a little bit of the historical gerrymandering issues that we've seen, and if you took civics at some point or American government at some point in your life, you understand that the way that we elect people is representative based on geography and on demographic, and so how do we figure out where those lines are? And redistricting happens based on the population that they take in a snapshot during a census. And so every 10 years we get a census, and guess what we got? The census. This year is really weird because it was really weird.
Yeah, I
In
think
every way.
I saw an NPR article that just came out today about how most likely the census data will eventually come out, I think in July, which is really late.
It's really late. And so this came up as part of the conversation that we're having right now. And I apologize for tinkering around over here, but I want to make sure I'm being accurate, especially if any questions come in about it, because I think it's really important. And especially this year where I am really motivated to make sure that any misinformation about voting and voting access and elections, we have a responsibility to dispel any of the myths out there. So redistricting this year, because the census was a little bit delayed, census workers typically go door to door all over the country. They hire hundreds of extra people in each district to go out and go door to door to count heads. It's literally a head count. And so they know how to appropriate funds, how to get lines drawn for local, state, school board, and federal lawmaking. So, that's how your House member at the state level gets elected, is those lines are through the census. I did it again. Comes down to us also. What we understood from this week was that the time crunch is making sure that we're getting all that accurate census information that comes from the federal government, because the census is a federal program. They use all that information to redistrict for local elections. And as you all know, that every 2 years here in Orange County, every other commission seat has a reelection. And I believe in the next one, the mayor also is up for reelection. So evens and odds go every 2 years. So obviously District 1, mine was a 2020. So the evens and the mayor go in 2022. So here we are in 2021, and the census data that should have been already sort of in place so that we can get the redistricting information out there and getting the advisory board put together isn't happening in the same timeline. So from what I understand, and this was a really great meeting we had with Jason Neighborhood Services and with people that do the redistricting in the legal department here at the county, is that what they are, they obviously have to abide by some very fundamental constitutional principles of a equal representation, one man, one vote, and making sure that we're not bisecting cultural or racial communities, historical communities. So there's all these considerations that go into how those lines are drawn.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that Orange County does it, after the way that Orange County does it is after that information comes in, there is a redistricting advisory committee that's formulated, and each commissioner actually nominates two people from their district to sit on that, and then the mayor, I believe, also gets some at-large nominations to that. And then they start doing community meetings and meetings with experts about what changes have taken place over the last 10 years and what the demographics are in any particular place. And I will tell you, after having studied the changes in sort of the way the districts look in Orange County over the years, there's never any really huge changes. There are adaptations. They sort of chip away here and add in there. They do not try to bisect, or actually they're prohibited from bisecting based on race or on socioeconomic status. But so there's a lot that goes into it, and overseen by the Voting Rights Act, and operating under equal protection under the law. So we're looking at big constitutional principles. And so, I think there's going to be some conversations in the coming months about who maybe would be interested in serving on that committee. I know I have friends that are really smart and interested, and I want to make sure that the District 1 appointees also have a history of how District 1's historical communities are, where they're located and how they're made up. And so those things are all really meaningful. But it's it's going to be a process. It's going to require community involvement, and I know I say that a lot, but this one is going to be really important because we don't get to do this again for another 10 years. So it's exciting that I'm in office in a time that this is happening, but at the same time I'm a little apprehensive because I know that District 1 has grown tremendously since the last census, which means that I will probably lose some portion of the district, but that process will be ongoing. So I want to try to reassure people that, because I think there's some fear that there's going to be a line drawn right in the middle of a historic community that operates really as a sort of a block of interest for that community. And all of that is going to be something that we will be able to take into account with your input, with all of the feedback that we get, so that we don't alienate anybody, and we incorporate all of that, all of the data and all of the community's thoughts and feelings and history into those decisions.
Yeah, there'll be a series of like public hearings, or excuse me, public meetings for people to shed some light on their sentiments of this. And then there'll be this advisory board. It's going to have to carry a lot of weight in a very short period of time because the elections are coming up next year.
Yes.
And so this all has to be hashed out before next year.
Yeah. So, I was just looking at the permitted considerations, preservation of political subdivisions, which means that if it was already, the line was already there, then that can be something that is considered by the redistricting going forward. Preservation of communities of interest, and this is what I was saying, that historical or cultural interest, which means, for the communities that have reached out to me with a concern that because they're somewhere near the line of the district, that there's a chance that they will be bisected, and I want to try to, make sure that that is one of the considerations that we can take into account is the whole of whatever that community of interest is. And then a general protection of incumbents. So what that means is that if there are, if there's a commissioner that's somewhere near the edge, that they're not going to redistrict them out of their own district. That obviously would be that would be a constitutional violation. So those are all things that'll come into play. I think we can continue to talk about this as it progresses. So there are, I think every time this happens, and this was something I thought was interesting that they explained from the legal department, there are usually challenges that do come up, and that's a normal thing because communities that have either changed, grown, or shrunk over years are they're oftentimes wanting to clarify and get a court to make a particular point about where that line should be. So those challenges are normal and they come up, and I don't want anyone who is considering participating in the advisory board to be concerned about that. The legal team here and the people who look at, over making sure that everything is abiding by our Constitution will always be involved at every step. So, I just want there to be some comfort taken in the how seriously I take making sure those communities of interest stay together, and how this is going to be a participatory, ongoing dialogue through the next months, year.
And I think the website they'll probably have more and more resources as we move closer to that date. But I think we have between March and July, we'll be getting way more information sent to this office. So before we take questions, one of the last things that is on the list today is the CRA in Windermere. I know you actually had a chance to touch base. Excuse me. Did I put Winter Garden? You had a chance to meet some of the city managers. You're still doing rounds of introductions and getting to meet people, but but I know that was something that came up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've talked about our acronym problem, or we are addicted to acronyms. And so CRA, if you all hadn't tuned in or have tuned in, and it's a pile of letters at this point, which I totally understand. It's Community Redevelopment Act, and a community redevelopment is the key word, because the Florida legislature basically put into place some statutory guidelines that allow us as local lawmakers to set aside certain funds for community redevelopment. The qualifications can vary, and if you look at the statute, one of the only things that's really super clear is that it must address some blight in the community. And I don't like that word. I feel like it's a little bit loaded. What is blight? What are you saying about my neighborhood? Oftentimes what that means is that we just need to make sure we're investing more, and that for some reason we haven't been investing what it needs to be to get to its potential. I think something that's been sort of a much more covered in the media and talked about CRA is the iDrive CRA, because it does include some large commerce and our tourist corridor. But what I want to make sure people do know about is that there are CRAs all over the state, all over the county, that aren't talked about as much, and that you have seen the effects of, but you didn't maybe know what you were seeing. And one of those is downtown Winter Garden, for our Winter Garden friends who love Winter Garden. When I first moved to the west side of Orange County, Winter Garden was not what it is right now. You went down Plant Street, and it was abandoned buildings and a torn up asphalt road. And now you drive down, and it's boutiques and restaurants and outside cafes, and we have this vibrant farmers market on Saturdays. And you think, well, how did that happen? Well, there was a lot of community interest. There was at the time, the local government in the county, and there was a CRA formed. Well, one of the conversations I had this week, actually, with the county manager in Winter Garden, was about their CRA and what they're looking at to do to lift up East Winter Garden, which is an area that still has its challenges and still really could use some investment. And so, there's going to be more information coming soon about some of those plans. But I think that what I want you all to know about is that the CRA that you hear about on iDrive isn't the only one. And if you can think of a CRA, or Community Redevelopment Act, as a sort of a little pile of general funds that's been moved over to be used for specific purposes, and those specific purposes have to be outlined ahead of time. And I am very committed. I've been asked by different people in different parts of the county what my position is on CRAs, and I give an answer that I feel like may sound generic, but it's true. And it's that I will make a decision if it comes up for a vote based on the most good it can do for the most people. And so, if there's a CRA that has been in place and the goals that were laid out have been met, and the renewal or extension of that CRA isn't necessary for continued prosperity in that region, I don't know if I would be convinced for that particular CRA to be renewed. If I if there was information and facts to substantiate or to compel a continuation or extension of a CRA somewhere because of a continued identified need, then I think it is a good idea, because it does allow to really kind of hone in on those needs in communities or areas that once they're lifted up can really be a great economic driver. So I think, it is a good tool that was set up by our state legislature. I don't think it's always like any other statutory tool. I don't know if it's always used the way that it was intended to be used. But that does fall back on us. So those things will come in front of the commission, and there'll be more information. If you have questions about any of those, or if there's another area that you're like, did they have a CRA? Reach out. I will do some looking. I know that there are several. I think a lot of times when you see some of the historic downtowns that that kind of start looking like, oh, look, the Brook Pavers just got redone, and that there was probably a CRA in effect. I think a lot of ports. I think the port in Tampa, they used the CRA to kind of revitalize the area once the industry moved out, and so. It's it's an interesting tool in the toolbox of ways that we can make sure that people are getting what they need in specific pockets around the county. And so I just want to be as fair and equitable as possible in the way that we decide things going into those CRAs. Because really, I mean, if you look at the general fund, there's nothing that prevents funding any of those things from the general fund. The idea is that if you have a CRA in place, that it earmarks it so that it's not competing with other needs for general fund dollars.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating how much power the citizens have. All you have to do is get your community to come together and develop a plan to show how those economic drivers can be influenced by said project. So if it's, an area where, the roads are a little too narrow or a little too outdated, or maybe just there's no gas stations or something that's stopping people from coming to a certain part of town that has small businesses that are really struggling or suffering, it sounds like this could be something where the community comes together and develops a proposal and then takes it to the county and says next funding cycle.
There are a lot of tools like that. And I think we're going to be able to, as we get to know groups in our community, which we're having the pleasure of getting to know a little better and what their needs are, that there are tools out there for us to be able to utilize in order to try to resolve some of those problems. Some of them may be, low-hanging fruit, and we can resolve them, in a quicker way. Some of them may take some strategic longer-term budgeting. But yes, I do. There are, and the Florida legislature, for all of the things that I curse it for, a lot of times, but sometimes they come up with some pretty good structuring for some of these things for us to be able to utilize in order for us to have community groups, when they do come together, a way for them to move forward with those goals. And I think it's important, especially in a county that's as big as Orange County. We have such a huge county that not everybody falls into a municipality, or even if they do, that municipality may face its own challenges. And so as the charter county that municipality falls into, we really get an opportunity to partner with them to achieve some of the goals that they have.
This is why many times I feel like residents will organize after a problem has already hit the fan and people are struggling.
I don't blame them for that, though. I think, so part of me, I want everyone to be involved, and I want to have a dialogue, but I do think that sometimes you shouldn't really be penalized for expecting the people that you hired to do their job.
Right.
Right. Gold star for competence, do your job, people. And I do think that sometimes there's that feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't clue into this happening as a citizen. And I was a citizen as on the other side of that so often, where I'm like, I can't believe I didn't know this was going on until it got to this point.
Yep.
Well, it's because ultimately you kind of you do have a sense of trust that the people who you've hired, which means your leadership or the administrators of a municipality or a county, that they're hopefully doing what you hired them to do. So, that being said, we need you to we need you to be involved.
Well, this is why you doing these virtual office hours is so important, because you're setting the bar of like, hey, I am paid to help you.
That's it.
And you have a lot more power than you might even
That's
know.
it. You hired me. I am here to be a conduit and an advocate and to push for whatever it is that you need. But it doesn't mean that I know what's going on until you tell me, and it doesn't mean that I have the best solution, which is also where I really rely on the expertise. And that is to me, I'm telling you, that's like the magic of District 1, is that we have so many really great residents who really do have their own avenues of expertise that they've come from, a variety of professions and educational backgrounds, and they come to the table with that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got the perfect information for us to be able to go to, whatever we need to go to try to get something done.
Well, let's see if we have any questions. Nope, no questions. Alrighty. Well, do you have any little last minute things you want to say?
So if we have no questions, because we're answering things, and I know that, obviously District 1 has like the dream team here, and so that may be it, then that's totally cool. But if we have no questions because we are boring you to death, we can go to trivia. I might go to trivia. If we go to trivia, and we might give away things like, I don't know, bookmarks. Oh, we have the Think 5 coloring books.
Oh, cute.
So
cute.
we might have to go to trivia and see if we can give away some good county swag that I will even personally spend money on mailing to people if they want to play our trivia game.
Yeah.
And that might be kind of fun, get people to plug in a little bit. Or if we want to do one of these that you have like a specific topic that we can bring in an expert on. And I don't mean like an expert, but maybe just somebody that a local expert, somebody who's been here longer, someone who has even been, in government at a different level, or has some insight from one of the municipalities. That might be fun. So just let us know, and we will adapt and grow. And yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Happy Friday. Have a fun weekend.
Yes, happy Friday, and thank you.
Happy Friday, everyone, and we'll see you next week, Friday at 4 p.m.